So it seems like Nintendo has been in the news a lot lately, for better or for worst. And I don't know. I feel like 2025 is going to be a year where the company stands out for the most part, even more so than it did in the past several years because releasing their Switch 2 console in June, and there's a lot of games that's going to be coming out for that console that people are stoked about, including Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza, and Metroid Prime 4. And all those games are going to be somewhat expensive, especially Mario Kart World, which is going to be $80. The Switch 2 is going to be 450 by itself, and if you get the bundle with Mario Kart World, it's going to be around the ballpark of $500. And while there's a lot of people who are basically pre-ordering the Switch 2 and the games that's going to be on the Switch 2, Nintendo has been doing everything in their power to try and crack down on emulation because people are going to try and pirate and do all kinds of stuff with the new Switch 2 games. And as I talked about in a previous video, they're not afraid of taking legal action towards people who do stuff like that. Just acts pocket pair because they've been dealing with backlash from Nintendo with the success of Power World and how much it resembles that of Pokemon, at least like the concept and the inspiration and all that stuff. And as far as Nintendo cracking down emulation is concerned, yeah, I think it's been made clear over the past couple of years that Nintendo is not going to have anybody profit off of their IPs or their ideas or anything like that. And it's gotten to a point where they have decided to make changes to their user agreement because there's been an updated version of that has been published online. And the original, I guess, user agreement that we got like back in like 2021 states the following. It says you're not allowed to lease, rent, sublease, or sorry, sublicense, publish, copy, modify, adapt, translate, reverse engineer, decompile, or disassemble all or any portion of Nintendo account services without Nintendo's written consent or unless otherwise express permitted by applicable law. Now, I'm not going to read the updated version because you can find that on various websites, including Nintendo Life, because it's really long. But the point is, they've gotten stricter in relation to their policy for, I guess, for pirating games and in relation to emulation and all that stuff. And I think it's reasonable because the people who are pirating games, they were profiting off of that, and Nintendo wasn't getting any of that money at all. And they had like they had a victory against the storage, a company that was behind the file sharing of onefitcher.com. And like I talked about earlier, the pocket pair, controversy is something that I think is still an ongoing case. But yeah, I mean, piracy has definitely been a big thing in relation to gaming as of late, especially considering the fact that the cost of everything is going up. And and it makes you wonder, like, aside from that, why is this happening? Well, I've been on like Reddit and I've seen, different complaints that people have had about it. People have been complaining about Nintendo because they have horrible service, specifically online. Also, their backwards compatibility could be better. Some would go as far as to say that it's bad, but everybody has her own respective opinion about that. I heard the Switch 2 is supposed to be backwards compatible with Switch games, but I'm not exactly sure if it's going to be a similar deal to that of the PlayStation 3, where there was backward compatibility, but only worked for certain games. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work for Nintendo's next gen console, but I don't know. I think one of the reasons why people, emulate older games and stuff like that is because Nintendo doesn't do a lot of remakes. They don't remake a lot of older games. That's especially true for Mario games. Now, they did remake the Super Mario RPG game from '96, back in 2023, and that was something that actually surprised me. But there are definitely older Mario games that people would love to see get remade, but never happened. We never got a remake for Super Mario World, for Super Mario Galaxy 2. Um, that's just to name a couple, but I don't know. Like there are definitely things that Nintendo has not done that people have wanted to see for a very, very long time. And although they still have time to do that, for the most part, Nintendo, I mean, they're going to do what they want to do, and a lot of times they end up surprising a lot of people with new games, with their consoles, and how innovative they are with certain like accessories and gameplay mechanics in relation to certain titles. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like in some ways Nintendo's justified doing what they're doing, trying to eliminate piracy and emulation and all that stuff. But the fact that they had to have a they have this clause, this large clause written about piracy and all this other stuff is insane. I didn't think it would ever get this bad, especially like years ago, like when I started making videos. I think it was around the mid-teens, I started doing this. I never heard too much about piracy or emulation being a big thing or being a big deal back then, but it seemed like times have changes, or in like, video game companies are just like, you know, they're like relentless in terms of trying to make as much as they can from customers and consumers. But I will say this: I don't feel like Nintendo, like as strict as they are, I don't feel like they go out of their way to rip people off. I don't think they go out of their way to, overcharge you for a bad product or anything like that. Because there are video game companies who do that, and they've done like far worse than what Nintendo has in terms of service. And I don't think, like when it comes down to online service or anything, like I don't think any particular company is like, perfect or anything. But the numbers don't lie. You look at how much, Mario and Zelda and Donkey Kong and Splatoon and like all the older IPs. Look at how much like the new games sell. Look at how much their older games have sold in the past. So they're obviously doing something right. And obviously the gameplay and all that stuff is something that people are into. They can agree that, all that stuff is actually good, and they go the extra mile to make their new games better than their last games or their older games from like decades ago. So I don't know. I mean, it's just that when it comes to gaming in general, we just have to pay a more hefty price. And not all of it is, Nintendo or other companies just being greedy. It's just because the cost of living, the cost of gaming, and all that other stuff has had a negative impact on just about everything. And unfortunately, we just have to live and adapt to it in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, a lot of people are excited about the upcoming games that Nintendo have for the Switch 2 in the future. Will will these policy changes will they stop people from trying to pirate games and stuff like that? Well, the thing is, it turns out that Nintendo has a clause where if you try to pirate or emulate their games, your console could be bricked. And for those who don't know, like that means that if you try to do that, you won't be able to use your Switch 2 console at all, if you get caught pirating or anything like that. And I honestly feel like that's something that's going to make people think twice about doing anything, illegal or what have you, because the Switch console is damn near $500. It's like the same price or around the same price as the original PS4 when it first came out. And honestly, like I don't think people will go through all that trouble to buy a console that's really expensive only to have it bricked. You know what I mean? So, like if anything, I feel like it's going to be one of those deals where people buy the Switch 2 console just to like resell it or what have you. I think that's going to become a thing. It's going to become more. It's going to become more popular as time goes by, and and yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, what use does a brick console have? Like what value does it have? You know what I mean? So like if people like, just buy, Switch 2 consoles and they all try to do the same thing, they can all be like, "Oh yeah, Nintendo's being tyrannical, what have you." But I don't know. It's just like normally like with me, and this has always been the case when I buy a game or I buy whatever, I play it like once or twice and I never really play it that much afterwards because I don't know, like you would have to have no life whatsoever to go out of your way to try and, pirate something that, you know, that isn't really that popular, you know what I mean? And I honestly feel like this whole thing is going to be a trend that emerges within the gaming community, especially with corporations. I wouldn't be surprised if Microsoft or Sony started, doing the same thing with their game systems. But you know, I don't know. I just feel like for the most part, people are in general are just more scummy now compared to how they were 10 years ago. And instead of just paying for something and just enjoying whatever they get, um, they just decide to try and pirate things and try to make money off of it. And yeah, I mean, we are where we are because of that, and I think it's really unfortunate. But yeah, I mean, I feel like these type of changes is something that's going to become more prominent in the future. But aside from all that, I'm looking forward to the Switch 2. I'm looking forward to see how well these new games do in terms of sales. And I'm looking forward to what Nintendo has in store for the gaming community in 2026.